If you're looking to lose belly fat easily and quickly in 2025, this is the lesson for you. I'm going to reveal the best exercise in the world, number one, to burn belly fat. The best part about what I'm going to share with you today, it does not require willpower. You don't have to count calories. And as a matter of fact, one of the worst ways to lose weight and belly fat is to focus on calories. It's the biggest mistake people make. Most people think in order to lose belly fat, I need to eat less and move more. Here's the thing. If you lower your dietary calories, you're going to also lower your metabolism. The metabolism will match the calories coming in. There's a much easier and better way to do this because focusing on calories is a huge mistake. For example, you could cut your calories and consume 1,000 calories coming from steak, and another person could cut their calories and consume 1,000 calories coming from Skittles. Same amount of calories, 1,000, but the person consuming the Skittles will feel inflamed, they will gain weight, they will not burn the belly fat. The person consuming the steak will be less inflamed, they will lower a hormone called insulin, and they will burn belly fat. Therefore, it is not about the quantity of calories, it's about the quality. Chances are you've tried the whole calories in versus calories out approach. The problem is that it works short term, and then you do some damage to your metabolism. The metabolism slows down and it makes it much more difficult to lose weight. The perfect example of this is the TV show, The Biggest Loser. The Biggest Loser was a very popular TV show in the United States where they took overweight, not just overweight, but obese individuals and put them on a caloric restriction diet with extreme exercise. And if you watched it on TV, you saw many of these contestants lose a ton of weight throughout the progression of the TV show. They celebrated them, rewarded them, gave them a big round of applause. But what ended up happening to these individuals when the TV show ended? They all gained the weight back. In a 2016 study published in the Journal of Obesity, it looked at 14 former contestants from The Biggest Loser, and they were followed for 6 years after the show. Despite their dramatic weight loss during the competition, nearly all regained the majority of their weight and their resting metabolic rates plummeted, meaning they destroyed their metabolism. Their bodies were burning fewer calories than expected for their size, and this persisted long after the caloric restriction ended. They also wrecked their hormones. Leptin, which is a hormone that signals to your body and your brain, you're full, no need to overeat. This is the hormone of fullness. This hormone leptin dropped drastically after the show ended, making it more difficult for participants to feel satisfied even with adequate food intake. And the study also highlighted that 5 out of the 4 contestants they followed ended up gaining more weight than when they started the show. Fat loss is not a math equation. Your body is not a calculator. Your body is a very incredible, unique biochemistry lab. So instead of focusing on calories, we want to focus on hormones, specifically the hormone insulin. Insulin is the only fat storage hormone in your body. It's an energy sensor. And if you're going to gain belly fat, it's because of insulin. When the hormone insulin is high, it signals to your metabolism, store fat, store belly fat. When we drop the hormone insulin, it creates insulin sensitivity and we start burning belly fat. This is simple human physiology. So the goal is insulin sensitivity. When we are insulin resistant, we are going to have inflammation around the cell membranes, and those receptor sites that need to hear the message of your fat-burning hormones will not hear the message. It's like me muting the mic here. I'm communicating with you. I could shout at you, but you're not going to get the message. The message is not received. You're going to be frustrated. I'm going to be frustrated. There's going to be symptoms. This is the same thing that happens to your metabolism. You become weight loss resistant. So this leads me to the best exercise in the world for fat loss. This exercise not only lowers insulin and makes you more insulin sensitive, it also increases your metabolism, and you will feel incredible practicing this exercise. You'll have more energy, you'll feel vital, it'll optimize your hormones. So what is the #1 exercise in the world? That's gonna be strength training. And building lean muscle mass is the best way to create insulin sensitivity so you burn belly fat. But not all strength training exercises are the same. I'm gonna give you the exact routine blueprint that I've used on thousands of students all across the world to burn belly fat. Not only have I used it with them, but as you can see in these before and after photos here I'm showing you on the YouTube lesson, I use these exercises to burn 80 pounds of pure fat in 9 months. I went from 34% body fat to as low as 6% body fat with the following routine. Before I lay out the routine for you, here's how this works. The first thing to consider is that we're not looking to necessarily achieve weight loss. We're looking to achieve fat loss. See, there's a big difference. When you count calories or exercise in excess, you're gonna lose weight. But a lot of the weight you lose is muscle mass, is water retention. It's not necessarily fat loss. There's a difference. Now the goal is to lose fat, not necessarily too much weight too quickly. Now, what we want to do here is enhance insulin sensitivity through strength training. The more muscle mass you have on your body, and I'm not saying you need to become a bodybuilder or a CrossFitter, but you want to build some lean muscle mass. The more lean muscle mass you have, think of that muscle as a sponge that sucks up and absorbs excess glucose in your bloodstream. This is important because then your pancreas does not have to produce the insulin to clear that glucose in your bloodstream. This activates something called the GLUT4 transporters. Resistance training increases the number of GLUT4 transporters in muscle cells. These transporters help shuttle glucose from the bloodstream into muscles, reducing blood sugar levels without requiring much insulin. Muscle tissue is one of the primary storage sites for glucose in the body. When you strength train, your muscle mass uses glucose for energy, depleting their glycogen stores. This creates more room for glucose uptake, improving insulin sensitivity. Strength training reduces visceral fat, the nasty inflammatory fat around your organs, which is a major contributor to chronic disease. Strength training boosts your metabolic rate. More muscles equal more calories burned without having to track or count those calories. Muscle tissue is metabolically active, meaning it burns more calories even at rest. The more muscle you have, the higher your resting basal metabolic rate, making it easier to burn fat just sitting on the couch. There is also a post-exercise oxygen consumption that occurs after strength training. Your body continues to burn calories at an elevated rate to repair muscle and replenish energy stores, further aiding in fat loss. This is different than doing a long, drawn-out cardio session. A lot of people who do, for example, Orange Theory or long-distance runs, and they have either an Apple Watch or, let's say, like a polar heart rate strap to calculate how many calories they're burning through a 60-minute cardio session, they're not getting accurate data. I'll give you an example. When I used to own my CrossFit gym here in Miami, I had a lot of people, a lot of members wear these heart rate monitor straps to calculate their calories burned. And they would tell me, Ben, I burned 650 calories with that cardio session. I burned 470 calories with that cardio session. That's what my heart rate monitor is showing me. But that's not accurate data because they think now they could eat 470 more calories of food or 600 plus more calories of food and have a little bit of a wiggle room there. But it's showing you the amount of calories you burn in that hour, even if you just sat on the couch, because your metabolism is always burning calories. And if you sat on the couch, you probably burn 400 calories in that hour. So in the example of the person who burned, let's say 600 calories with a 60-minute session, they probably only burn about 150 to 200 calories. When you factor in the amount of calories your metabolism already burns throughout the entire day. It's a game that doesn't work. Instead, when you do strength training, you get extra boost in your metabolism for hours after that workout is achieved when you're sitting on the couch watching Netflix. There's a hormone optimization that occurs with strength training. Strength training increases levels of fat-burning hormones like growth hormone and testosterone, which also help to maintain muscle mass and burn fat. Strength training improves your ability to switch between burning fat and burning sugar for energy. This is called metabolic flexibility, and it is the key to longevity. It also creates enhanced mitochondrial function. Regular strength training boosts the number and efficiency of mitochondria and muscle cells, which helps the body utilize energy more efficiently. Strength training lowers inflammation as well. Chronic inflammation is the culprit of many diseases out there, including weight gain. Strength training lowers systemic inflammation, reduces the strain on insulin signaling pathways. Strength training also reduces oxidative stress, improving overall cellular health and function at the same time. Strength training also can influence hunger hormones like ghrelin and leptin, making it easier to control your appetite. By building muscle and becoming stronger, you're more likely to increase your overall daily activity, further enhancing caloric expenditure. So now that you understand how important it is to strength train, let's discuss a routine for you to follow to burn fat. Now, when we talk about strength training, I'm referring to compound movements. These are movements that recruit multiple joints at the same time that yield the biggest bang for your buck. These movements are different than isolated movements. I'll give you an example of isolated strength training movements. These would include bicep curls, leg extensions. You're isolating a muscle group, and it's more of an aesthetic movement, but not necessarily a functional movement and not necessarily the best movement for fat loss. Some examples of compound movements include push-ups and bench press, squats, lunges, and a few others that I'm going to outline for you in a second. But these movements recruit multiple joints at the same time. They're functional. They're also called primal movement patterns, and that's going to be the focus of the exercise plan I'm going to lay out for you to burn belly fat in 2025 and beyond. Now, this is pretty simple. It does not require hours in the gym every single day. The workout sessions are only going to be about 30 to 40 minutes max, and you're only going to do this twice per week. A lot of people think you need to work out every single day or spend an hour at the gym, but actually less is more, and recovery is also really important here. So here's the routine. You will choose 2 days out of the week, carve out 30 to 40 minutes each session, and you're going to do 3 sets of 4 compound movements twice per week. All right, so for example, let's say Monday is your day of choice to do one of these workouts. You'll do 3 sets of 4 movements. Allow me to outline how this will work for you. The first exercise is going to be bench press or push-ups, depending on the equipment you have available. Either way, it'll work. You're going to complete 3 sets of bench press or push-ups. And what you're going to do, if you're doing the bench press with a barbell or with weighted dumbbells, you're going to complete 3 sets of 8 to 12 reps. So one set is 8 to 12 reps, meaning by the time you hit 8, 9, 10, or 11 or 12 reps, you are maxing out. You'll find the weight appropriate to hit that number. If you choose push-ups instead of the bench press, you're going to do 3 sets of maximum push-ups. You want to do them on your toes, but if you're starting out and a beginner, you could first do it on your knees and do the maximum amount of push-ups you can do each set. That might be 5, that might be 20, that might be 35, but you'll do 3 sets of as many push-ups as possible. The second exercise here in the same workout is 3 sets of weighted squats or bodyweight squats. If you choose weighted squats, which would be a barbell on your back or holding a dumbbell like a goblet squat, you could look up on Dr. Google or YouTube University how to do these exercises, but you would do 8 to 12 reps of a weighted squat, find the appropriate weight. If you choose to do body weight squats, where you're simply just squatting down and standing up, you would do 20 squats. So 3 sets of 20 squats. The third movement here in your workout is going to be weighted shoulder press. You'll get dumbbells and you'll hold them up, or a barbell, and you'll do 8 to 12 reps of shoulder press. If you don't have any weights, then you could do arm presses until you fatigue, but ideally you want to get some weights for the shoulder press. 3 sets of 8 to 12 reps if it's weighted, or 3 sets of maximum amount of just your arms going up and down. The fourth exercise here in this same workout is 3 sets of a bench dip, or a chair dip, whatever you have available, where you'll line up the chair and you'll dip up and down for 8 to 12 reps. You're gonna alternate between each of these sets. So you'll first do the bench press, and then you move on to the squats, you move on to the shoulder press, you move on to the bench press. You do 3 total rounds of that, 3 total sets. I will write that out in the notes of the YouTube video and the notes of the podcast so you see it written out for you. That's one workout. It should take you about 30 minutes or so to complete, depending on how fast you go through it, and there's no need to rush in between those sets. Take a couple minutes to recover and move on. Now, you have one more workout for the rest of the week. Let's say it's Wednesday or Friday, whatever day you want to choose. Here is your next workout for the week. You're going to perform 3 sets of 1-arm rows. Go on YouTube and look at how to perform a 1-arm row, but you're essentially you essentially have your hand on a bench and you're pulling the weight back. You're at a angle here, and you'll find that video on YouTube, just Google it. But you'll do 8 to 12 reps on your right arm, 8 to 12 reps on your left arm with a dumbbell or something that has weight, and that'll be 1 set. You're gonna alternate that with 3 sets of burpees. Burpees are simply, you're gonna start standing, drop to the ground, let your thighs and your chest touch the floor. You're going to hop up, jump up, and clap. That's 1 burpee. You're gonna do 15 burpees for each of those 3 sets, so it'll equal 45 burpees in total. You're gonna alternate that with 3 sets of weighted lunges or body weight lunges. If you choose weighted lunges, you're going to hold 2 dumbbells, so 1 in each hand, and you're going to step forward with your right leg, step back, step forward with your left leg, step back. Make sure that knee lightly taps the floor each time you lunge. You're gonna do 8 to 12 reps on each leg, or if you do body weight lunges where you don't hold any weight, you're gonna do 20 body weight lunges, 10 on each leg, 3 total sets. The last exercise here in this workout routine are 3 sets of close grip bench press or close grip bodyweight push-ups. You're gonna do 8 to 12 reps, bringing your grip closer, which activates more of your inner chest and your triceps. You're going to, if you're doing a barbell or dumbbells, you're going to keep it close to your chest, all the way full extension. Take your time, 8 to 12 reps. If you're doing push-ups, you're gonna do maximum amount of push-ups each set. So you have 3 sets of each: 1-arm rows, burpees, weighted lunges or body weight lunges, close grip push-up, or close grip bench press. I will outline all that down below. Now I know you're thinking, what about cardio? I heard cardio helps to burn fat. Cardio can help if you want to add this to the routine. Walking and getting steps each day can be one of the best things you add to the mix here to burn some serious weight. Walking can be the king of fat loss if you do it the right way. Lack of activity and lack of walking, lack of steps actually lead to the accumulation of fat, especially belly fat. First, we need to understand that we have an obesity problem. Harvard is predicting by the year 2030 that 50% of the population in the United States will be classified as obese. Okay, when we look at the average step count that people get each day, it's under 3,000 steps per day. It's very, very low. When you don't get enough movement and physical activity, it makes it very difficult to burn fat. This study from the Journal of Physiology, titled "Physical Inactivity Causes Exercise Resistance of Fat Metabolism," showed a vicious cycle with this graph here, where inactivity impairs fat metabolism after exercise. And it creates a vicious cycle where physical inactivity, lack of steps, makes it more difficult to burn fat. The study stated that recommendations regarding the amount of moderate to vigorous exercise needed for health should factor in the amount of background activity, but you want to aim, the study says you want to get about 8,000 steps per day or more to avoid what they call exercise resistance. But it's not just the weight loss, it's your overall health and longevity with daily steps. A recent meta-analysis published in the European Society of Cardiology and the University of Massachusetts Amherst highlights the significant health benefits of walking between 5,000 to 7,000 steps per day. The study, which analyzed data from 15 studies involving nearly 50,000 participants, found that walking at least 7,000 steps per day can reduce risk of all-cause mortality by 50 to 70% compared to those who walked fewer steps. How does all this tie into fat loss? Well, when you walk, you move your largest muscles in your body, your glutes, your quads, your hamstrings. The simple contraction of these muscles allows insulin to become more sensitive as the cells in your legs use glucose in the bloodstream. Sensitizing insulin is the #1 factor for losing belly fat. Walking utilizes more fat as a percentage of fuel. The more steps you get, the more fat you are burning, and only fat, not breaking up any muscle. Walking spares muscle, as a matter of fact. It's important to preserve muscle mass. The more muscle mass you have, as we established, the higher your basal metabolic rate. Getting daily steps actually preserves this. Walking every day also improves blood flow into your muscles. Walking can be done pretty much by any person of all ages. Walking doesn't put too much pressure on your joints, making it very safe to do daily. But I'm going to share with you some ways to enhance your walking to get even more fat loss benefits. First of all, you want to aim to get at least 10,000 steps per day. If you could bring that over to 14,000 steps a day with that workout routine I gave you, you're going to lose serious belly fat, and you're going to lose it fast. The single best time to go for those walks are after all of your meals. If you have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, go for a 10 to 30-minute walk after breakfast, lunch, and dinner. If that's too difficult to do because of your schedule, choose the biggest meal of the day to go for that 10 to 30-minute walk. Here's why. There's something called postprandial glucose. When we eat food, we turn that food into strings of sugar called glycogen. That food gets converted to sugar in the body, and the blood sugar levels rise in the bloodstream. The body wants 1 teaspoon of sugar in the entire bloodstream to be considered an optimal state, which is 80 milligrams per deciliter. When glucose levels rise after eating a meal, insulin needs to be cranked out by your pancreas to clear that excess glucose out of the bloodstream into your cells. When this happens too frequently or too aggressively, we start storing belly fat. This could be measured by postprandial glucose. Postprandial means after eating. The higher your blood sugars rise after eating, the more insulin required, the more fat you store. By going for a walk 10 to 30 minutes after your meal, you blunt that glucose spike, that postprandial glucose spike, requiring less insulin to be produced, getting you into a fat-burning state much faster. Studies back this up. This particular study, titled "The Effects of Postprandial Walking on the Glucose Response After Meals with Different Characteristics," showed something really interesting. The study highlighted the results, and it said the following. Postprandial brisk walking substantially reduced the glucose peak in both studies, with no significant decreases across conditions. When evaluating the glycemic response throughout the 2 hours post-meal, postprandial walking was more effective after consuming either a low carbohydrate meal, a mixed meal, or even a high carbohydrate meal. Although higher glucose values were observed with the high glucose meal, the high carbohydrate drink, our findings show that a 30-minute postprandial brisk walking session improves the glycemic response after meals with different carbohydrate content and macronutrient composition. The next thing you want to do with your daily steps for fat loss is to create walking adaptations. Walking adaptation forces your body to adapt to different changes in patterns. This confuses your body and your muscles, which accelerates fat burning. Every great fitness coach and personal trainer understands the concept of muscle confusion. This is why that at-home workout program from the late 2000s called P90X worked so well. It created muscle confusion. When you change things up and force the body to adapt, you prevent plateaus and continue with fat loss progress. This all relates to a principle called hormesis. When you learn this principle of hormesis, it will change the way you think about health and fat loss forever. Now, the Wikipedia definition for hormesis is the following, and then I'll give you a better definition, but Wikipedia says hormesis is defined as a phenomenon in which a harmful substance gives stimulating and beneficial effects to living organisms, humans, when the quantity of the harmful substance is small. All right, what does that mean? It means you apply a stress, like walking adaptations, exercise, different biohacks. Your body adapts to that stress and you get stronger. But the key is you have to adapt to the stress. If you don't, you get weaker. This graph illustrates exactly what I'm talking about here. And I know many of you are listening on the Metabolic Freedom Podcast, so I will explain this in a way where you get it as well. The graph you're seeing on the screen shows an arc. At the bottom left of this arc, it shows an orange bar with too little, too low oxidative stress. This is a person who's not doing any exercise. They have a sedentary lifestyle. They are inflamed. We talked about how that creates exercise resistance, fat accumulation. This is where that person's at. Let's say you start following the routine I laid out for you today. 2 workouts, strength training workouts per week, 10,000 to 14,000 steps per day. Then you get into this zone of hormesis, which is the green zone that you see on the screen here. When you're in this zone of hormesis, you are adapting well, burning fat, getting stronger and healthier, and extending your lifespan. As you can see, the following things start to happen. Reactive oxygen species, ROS, go down. Antioxidants increase. Activity of antioxidant enzymes increase. Oxidative damage decreases. Oxidative damage repair increases, and your resistance to oxidative stress increases. This is where the magic happens. This is where you burn fat, have more energy, feel like an absolute health rock star. If you do too much exercise, too much stress in this example, you lose all those benefits. You lose that hormetic curve, and you can see in the bottom right in the graph, it goes red. And all the benefits that you were achieving, the complete opposite happens. You become inflamed, you start to store fat. So the workout that I laid out for you is just 2 workouts per week, 30 minutes each, with 10,000 steps per day. That gets you in that zone of hormesis where you're not doing too little, you're not doing too much, you're doing the right amount to adapt, to get stronger, and burn fat. Now we could actually apply this principle of hormesis to your daily steps. Here's how we're gonna do that. You're going to create walking adaptations. Several ways to achieve this. The first way is walking on an inclined treadmill or up and down a hill is a wonderful way to create adaptation. There are under the desk treadmills that can help you do this and burn fat while you work, or you can get outside and find a hilly road or a hill to walk up and down to create that adaptation. Walking backward or sideways is another way to create adaptation, and you're going to benefit your knees. If you do this in your neighborhood, your neighbors might think you're crazy, but then you could educate them on why you're doing that. The third way to create walking adaptations is to go outside in the elements, whether it's a hot day, a cold day, a rainy day, a snowy day. This is a form of stress that you could adapt to, force adaptation and hormone optimization. Another way to do this is to take the stairs instead of the elevator or the escalator. I know I did this for many years. I lived on the 4th floor of my apartment building for many years, and I never, or I shouldn't say never, rarely took the elevator. I always took the stairs. Another great way to create adaptations. And then when you're driving to the shopping mall or the shopping center, don't drive around for the closest parking spot. Park far, get out of the car and walk. It all adds up. This is very, very important. Now, there's a third way to increase fat loss through walking, and that is through the intensity of your walks. Most people, when they walk at a casual pace, which doesn't really elevate the metabolism enough to burn extra calories. When you increase your speed, you create an energy demand on the body, which forces your body to increase its metabolic rate, your metabolism. A good walking pace to achieve this is to try the walking and talking test. If your intensity is at an optimal level for fat loss, you should be somewhat out of breath as you walk and talk. It should sound something like this. You're walking and you're talking and you're out of breath, but you are able to speak somewhat. But if you're speaking normally, like I am right now, and you're not having any issues, you're not at a high enough intensity. By adding a dumbbell to each hand, you could also create a higher demand of intensity and more fat burning, increasing the speed, walking backward, all the things that I mentioned. The extra load, by the way, if you have like a weighted vest or dumbbells, forces your body to adapt, which as we established is very important for fat loss results. Now, what about diet? You cannot out-exercise a poor diet. That is true. I gave you the blueprint in this lesson on the best exercise and routine for fat loss, but we have to consider the food that you eat as well. We already established that if you have high levels of insulin, you are storing fat. If you have low levels of insulin, you are burning fat. That leads us to the 3 macronutrients that we consume: protein, carbohydrates, and fat. As you can see here on the graph, it is the carbohydrates that spike blood insulin the highest versus protein and fat. Protein has a moderate response, and fat barely moves blood insulin levels. That means with your diet, if you really want to get the best results here and burn fat and feel incredible in 2025 and beyond, you want to consume less carbohydrates, more protein and fat. Overall, you want to bring your total carbohydrates under 50 total grams per day until you achieve your desired weight. You want to focus on healthy fats that come with protein. Protein is actually the most important macronutrient to focus on and to hit for your fat loss goals. Having enough protein will help you build the lean muscle, preserve the lean muscle, help you feel full and satiated, increase your metabolic rate, and prevent you from overeating and snacking and going into your pantry and eating Oreos and cookies in between your meals. The goal is to get 1 gram of protein per pound of your ideal body weight. So if you're watching this or listening to this and you weigh 235 pounds and your goal weight is 185 pounds, then you want to consume 185 grams of protein each day. Ideally, the protein should come from animal protein, not plant protein. However, if you're a vegetarian or a vegan, I respect it. You could still do it with those sources, but just know plant-based protein is not complete. Animal protein is complete and bioavailable, has all the essential amino acids you need. So you're not going to count your calories. You're going to track only 2 things here: the total amount of protein you're eating each day to hit your protein requirement, which is unique to you, and your total carbohydrates to stay under 50 total grams of carbs per day. Which sources of carbs are you going to consume for the 50 grams? Non-starchy carbohydrates. Just Google that, you'll see a whole list, typically green leafy vegetables. You can use free apps on the internet to track that. The one I use and recommend is Chronometer over at chronometer.com/ketocamp. You can get that for free. I'll drop that down below. Now let's get to the most common questions that you have submitted on YouTube on this topic. First question is this: I've heard that fasted workouts help you achieve fat loss faster. Is this true? It is true. When you go into a workout on an empty stomach, you're going to burn more belly fat. This is because you are allowing your body to use your fat stores as energy first, versus having a protein shake or banana or oatmeal or whatever you're eating before a workout. When you eat calories before a workout, you're putting the food calories at the front of your metabolism to be burned for energy first. You burn through that, then you go back to burning body fat. That might happen in 20 minutes, or it might not even happen during the workout, depending on how much you eat before the workout. But when you go into the workout in a fasted state, you're putting your belly fat at the front of your metabolism, and your metabolism is using that for energy first. So it is beneficial to work out in the fasted state. Personally, I stay pretty lean year-round, and I do 99% of my workouts in the fasted state. You just want to make sure you are getting enough protein during your eating window, because if you're fasting, it might be difficult to get the proteins. Depending on how much you fast will determine on whether you want to change your fasting schedule, because you do want to get your protein. That is important. Second question is, how do I know I am recovering in between these stressors, the walking adaptations, the workouts? That's a really important question. And you know you're recovering in between workouts if you feel more energized the rest of the day, if you continuously get stronger with your workouts, if you're getting great sleep at night. You know you're not recovering if you are not getting stronger each week. You know you're not recovering if you feel tired and depleted the rest of the day. You know you're not recovering if you're not getting quality sleep. And one of the best things you can do is track your heart rate variability, HRV, to see if you are recovering. It's a great gauge of stress and if your nervous system is adapting to the stress. And ideally, you want to see your HRV increase throughout the weeks, not decrease. If you see your HRV decreasing, you are not adapting to the stress. You want to scale it back a little bit and get back into that zone of hormesis that we spoke about. You could track HRV with an Apple Watch, a Fitbit. They're not as accurate as an Oura ring. I use that, this ring right here, or a Whoop band, and I'll drop a link for all of those devices in the notes down below if you want to track your HRV, which I highly recommend you do. The next question is, how do I prevent a fat loss plateau? The cool thing about the routine I gave you is that there's enough variability for your body not to get comfortable, for you not to hit a plateau. But if you do experience plateau, the name of the game is to change things up. Find other compound movements that I did not outline, throw those into the mix. You should be gradually increasing the weights as you progress each week and get stronger. You could change the rep count from 8 to 12 reps to 15 to 20 reps or 3 to 6 reps. Changing things up is the best way to prevent or to overcome a weight loss plateau. The next question is cardio best before a strength training workout or after? If you choose to do cardio, maybe it's some running or sprinting or walking or whatever it is, cycling, rowing, it's better to do that at the end of your strength training workout. You'll get more fat loss benefits that way, and by not doing it before the workout, you'll use most of your energy and strength for strength training exercises, which is very important. If you do cardio before a strength training workout, you might not be as strong, you might not get the biggest bang for your buck during that workout. So if you're going to pair cardio with a workout, do it after the strength training session, not before. Next question, would creatine supplementation help me with strength training and fat loss? I'm a big fan of creatine. If you're not taking creatine, add a creatine supplement into the mix. I personally, as a guy who's 6 foot tall, 6'2" actually, I take 7 grams of creatine per day. Some of the women in my academy and programs will take 3 to 5 grams of creatine each day. Creatine has been well researched for strength training, muscle building, muscle recovery, mitochondrial health, great for the brain, great for the body. So I would definitely recommend creatine. I'll drop a link for the creatine supplement that I use and recommend in the notes down below. Next question is, what are your thoughts on essential amino acids? I think they are a great supplement to take, and I personally take it every single day as well. Essential amino acids are a great way to fill in the gaps if you're not getting enough essential amino acids through food. It helps with muscle building, preserving lean muscle mass, which as we know helps with fat loss. It's one of those supplements that are a staple in my routine, and I'll drop a link for the one that I use and recommend in the notes down below. The next thing is this. You say not to count calories, Ben, yet most fitness pros, personal trainers, doctors, dietitians, they're still teaching it's simply a matter of eating less and moving more to lose weight. Doesn't cutting calories automatically equal weight loss? Well, we established weight loss is not the same thing as fat loss. And the next thing that's gonna happen is, yeah, you'll lose weight in the beginning, and then you'll destroy your metabolism. And I wanna go a little bit deeper with you because I really want you to get it. I don't want you to be distracted by counting calories. For many years, during my early personal training days, from 2008 all the way until 2015, where I even had a gym, I would preach that it's simply a matter of eating less and moving more. I did seminars at my CrossFit gym on the science of fat loss, where I would teach people to calculate their total daily energy expenditure and then get into a calorie deficit and they'll lose weight. And it worked. In the beginning, they started to gain the weight back, they started to have hormone problems, and I realized, wow, this might be the wrong approach because it is not about calories. Do calories matter? Yes. Are they important? No. So let's go a little bit deeper with a colleague of mine, Dr. Don Clum. This will blow your mind. This will end the debate and the discussion. Does counting calories help with fat loss? It'll prove to you that it does not, and it'll equip you to be more aware and smarter in your conversations with people who still think you just have to eat less and move more. Check out this amazing clip with Dr. Don Clum.
So why is that the calories in versus calories out approach flawed? What are some of the big flaws with the people following that? And there's so many that follow it, Don.
Well, there's basically two sides to that story. One, the calorie concept itself. Again, we're not saying that there's no such thing as a calorie or the energy doesn't matter coming in, coming out. But that calorie is a measurement of potential energy. Okay? And so the way it's calculated, there's an automatic buffer zone in there because it's done in a laboratory. It's done in a very controlled environment in an oven with measurements and things like that. That doesn't represent our body. So 4 calories out of a carb, for example, could be 5 in reality, could be 3 in reality. There's 25% buffer in there. And so if you're trying, and same thing with protein, same thing with fat, then there's alcohol, it's got 7 calories, right? That's a big one. And then there's a prioritization of which one gets burned first. So all of that taken into consideration, it's really almost impossible to accurately count calories in your meals. Even if you measure it, even if you have done this for years and you're following a number, you're going to be off. You could be, most likely you're off with too many, but you can be off with too few as well in your calculation. So the entire equation is inaccurate. So that's my problem number one with calories. And number two is our bodies aren't a linear system. Okay, that's what the laws of thermodynamics talk about, a closed linear system.
Right.
Our body is an open dynamic system that has a lot of variables. And when you're talking about weight loss or weight gain, muscle loss or muscle gain, you're talking about hormonal state more than caloric state. Okay, so your body is a demand-driven machine. It's not a supply-driven machine. What that means is just because you give it something doesn't mean it's going to do what you want. I could take 300 grams of protein, 3 meals a day of the best in the world. In a year, I'm not going to look like a bodybuilder just by that, right? I've tried it, doesn't work, right? So you have to create the demand. And you do that by your lifestyle. You do that by your hormonal status. Hormones trump calories every single time. Every single time. And so if you're in a state of growth or fed state, which means you're eating and insulin goes up and mTOR goes up, those are big ones, then you're going to be breaking down and storing, not eating, not using, right? Breaking down and storing. You actually break down muscle when you eat, as you eat protein, right? Very interesting thing. It starts to break everything down because your body can't be in two different systems, right? As you eat, it has to break it all down. And so your body goes into breakdown mode. When you stop, and that's insulin and mTOR. And then when you stop that switches over to repair mode. And that's when things dissipate out and your liver starts to release things into the system, nutrients more, and you start to absorb them and use them. Okay, that's when fat burning can happen, and that's where muscle building can happen. It's a separate state. Okay, fed versus repair, or growth versus repair, however you want to look at it. They're opposing. You can't have them both at the same time. And so when you're trying to think about weight loss, you think about calories, hormones trump calories. So if insulin's there, it doesn't matter what those macronutrients are, you're in that state. You're in the fed state and you can't do repair. That's all there is to it. And so calories are trumped by hormones, and hormones dictate whether we're building or breaking down in the body and what's going on.
So hormones are more important than calories. And when we talk about the fat storage hormones we have in the body, out of the 600 plus hormones in the body, Don, how many of them store fat?
Pretty much there are some that argumentatively store fat, but really it's insulin. Mm-hmm. Insulin, because fat storage is energy conservation. That's all it is.
Survival mechanism.
What?
A survival mechanism, essentially.
Yeah. Your body doesn't care what you look like, right? It cares that body doesn't waste a thing. I see people when they talk about fasting say, "Oh, your body dumps minerals." Your body doesn't dump anything ever. Right? Your body recycles. When you're in the repair state, your body recycles. Just think of autophagy as recycling. Forget the big word and what it means. The autophagy process is a recycling process. For example, when you're eating, people like to count how many proteins they're eating, how many grams and stuff like that. I don't get into that. I say you need a lot less than people say, and they get all over me. The reality is your body will recycle 700% more protein than you eat every day. What you eat actually contributes about 12.5% to your overall protein use of that day. It's a minor part. It doesn't need it. And when you get into the repair state, that recycling goes up with autophagy. And it starts to utilize things a lot more. And that's going on in the absence of insulin. Because when insulin goes on, it says, okay, store. We got stuff coming in. Let's get ready. We're going to store this. Okay, it's breaking. That's why it breaks it down. And so it stores it in form of glycogen in the liver and the muscles. And that can vary greatly between people. And a competitive athlete can have 4,000% more glycogen than someone who's sedentary. That's a lot. That's a lot of capacity, right? There's a glycogen capacity load. So that can vary. And then as that's going on, your body's insulin tells the fat cells to open up and bring it right in. Okay. And so if you will store fat as insulin goes, when insulin's on the job, that's just what it does. And so insulin's important, mTOR is important, but you want it to be cyclic and fast cycles. Boom, fed, repair. Short fed, long repair. Short fed, long repair. Because everything that people think about in growth, like get bigger, stronger, faster, really happens in repair. Growth we're talking about babies, we're talking about pregnancy, we're talking about fat gain, and we're talking about Tumors, to be honest, tumors, right? So insulin is the fat storing hormone. It controls the fed state, and it controls so many processes by doing it. That's the bottom line. And the other fat burning hormones that we can argue about, they all follow insulin anyway. Same thing with mTOR.
That's why you call insulin the bully of the block, because when insulin's around, it isn't really, those fat burning hormones are kind of scattered and running away, essentially.
Yeah, insulin is the bully on the playground, right? And insulin has a minion, cortisol. And when those two guys get together, it's even worse. They magnify each other when they're in an unhealthy state, right? There's nothing wrong with either one of them. But they're the two hormones that we can control the most with our behavior and our thoughts. Now, you can't do that with a lot of hormones. They're kind of on autopilot. They respond and react as they do based on how our body's built. But insulin and cortisol, you can activate with a thought. You can activate with an action, like exercise or lack of exercise. You can activate it by how you eat. You can activate it by, a perception of something. You can be wrong about a perception of a threat, for example, and you can throw it all off when it wasn't even real. Really, it's really influential. And so when they get going and they get out of whack, everything scatters. There's teeter-totters with all the other hormones, how they work together. Everything gets thrown off. They're the core-centric bullies on the playground. Yeah.
So you've mentioned before that people who are happier burn more calories than those who are not. How does that work?
Different hormonal state, right? Different energetics. It's people, when you eat food that's soft with the same macronutrients as something that's more solid, you burn less calories, right? Because it's easier. So you're talking about, that's where like the argument between protein shakes, like powder protein, and protein food comes in. 30 grams of each, identical amount of protein, dramatic difference in the body. Anything powdered or denatured, protein powder, any kind of flour-based food for baking, wheat, stuff like that, the body has a hyperinsulin response, right? Even though it's got the same amount of carbs or protein. So back to the protein, 30 grams of powder, 30 grams of steak or chicken or whatever it is. Low insulin impact, huge insulin impact. Can be up to 7 times more than sugar.
Wow.
Certain ones. And so it's a major insulin producer because your body doesn't sense nutrients in the blood like we've been taught. It interprets nutrients in our gut. Your food is not fuel. I really don't like it when people say that because it's misleading. It's not fuel. It's information. Your gut is on the outside of your body. If you think about it, tube going down through your body on the way out, it's all on the outside. And your food tells your body, where are you? Where you are. Am I in the north or the south? Is it what time of year is it? What's the conditions of my environment? Right? What's growing? What season is it? What's the earth like? That's really what your body's interpreting all that. And when you throw in a processed food from a powder or otherwise, I think it goes like, what the heck is this? Why are you eating this? Right? And doesn't know how to respond. So it takes out the big guns. It says, this has got to be something wrong. That's the only thing I can think of because it happened. It's very well documented, that hyper response.
Which ones are worse in terms of that response for protein powders? I know you mentioned that whey protein is very insulinogenic. So would you put that at the top of one of the highest insulin-causing protein powders?
It's the most tested, and we know the most. But there's no reason, because here's what happens. I'll get a bunch of messages. I take pea protein. What about my pea protein? Or I have hemp protein. Or I have I'm like, stop. There's no reason to think that other powdered proteins are any different. If you have a reason to think yours is different, let me know. Not just because you buy it. That doesn't count. Right? If there's a reason, but the science makes sense. It's a powdered denatured product, concentrate or isolate, doesn't matter, and your body hyper responds. Does it matter what kind of flour that the bread is made of to get the response? No, it doesn't. It could be a crusty bread, could be a soft bread. It doesn't matter. It's the fact that it's made like that and it's processed. Your body just over responds in our view.
So how would that show if somebody, let's say they have a protein shake and they're testing their glucose, they have a CGM or the blood glucose finger prick, they test before, they test after, like what would they see to kind of see what that protein's doing to them?
Probably not too much because you can have a very different glycemic response, a glucose response to your insulin response. Dramatic, because people often will write back to me, no, I tested my insulin and it didn't go up after I ate this. I'm like, you did? How'd you do that? Because you can't finger prick and test your insulin. You have to go to a lab. It's hard. That's why we don't have a whole lot of itemized food numbers for insulin like we do glucose, because you can just test that all day long if you want, or with a continuous, like you said. So like if you think about the protein, you can have a powder, might not affect your blood sugar that much. There's a lot of things on the American Diabetes Association food list that are approved for glucose, but they crank insulin up. Bad move, right? Really bad. Things like milk, like yogurt, low glycemic. Dairy's been shown to improve diabetes, but the insulin goes up is much more dramatic. So that's the big difference. You might not see a whole lot on your testing with glucose when insulin is spiked. Sometimes it'll even show your glucose go down because there's more insulin.
Right. I've seen that before having sheep's milk yogurt. I've seen my glucose drop from like 75 to like 55 without any other variables. And that's exactly what happened there. I had a huge insulin response, which is fascinating. Do you think there's going to be a continuous insulin monitor or insulin sticks anytime soon to measure that?
Yeah, I think it's industry driven, unfortunately. Right? It's industry driven. And if they come up with a way to make money on it, like they do now, the glucose monitor, because I don't know, 10 years ago we were playing with that at the different seminars we would go to, if you remember, and that they were really expensive, like $800 and all this crazy stuff to get one of those sensors. Now they're going to be coming out in a couple of years. They'll be as cheap as a glucose monitor, as a regular glucose prick monitor. So I think they will, because now you can get things that you couldn't get before, like you can get vitamin D sent to your home, test and send it back. Yeah, great. That used to be a big obstacle, and the price is coming down dramatically, and so you're going to see it. It's going to come out, but it depends on the demand, and that's industry. So we'll see here's the problem: industry is focused on glucose. Yeah. Since 1923, when they discovered what insulin is and does, and they made it open source. They didn't patent it. They gave it to the world. They saw type 1 diabetics that were dying live. Dramatic. Huge advance. But the problem is we translated that same model into type 2. They didn't have much type 2 when this happened. That was just for type 1s. And when they were wasting away, you gave them what they called secretions at the time. They didn't even have the name yet. They would come back to life. They would plump up. Huge issue. I mean, these are kids, 7 years old, parents. I mean, it's a very emotional, great thing. And then as we went, we had a cure now for type 1, and suddenly type 2 starts creeping up. And we said, oh, we got insulin to help them, and it translated and it's the wrong model. It's like going across the street in England and looking the wrong way. What happens when you step out? You get hit by a car, right? Because they drive on the other side. I want to look both ways before I step, and we're not. So that's the problem. The industry is glucose-centric, but insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome, prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, Alzheimer's, they're all insulin-centric.
So what are some blood markers that we could do on a quarterly basis or maybe yearly basis to monitor our insulin health?
You can do a serum insulin, which is a fasting insulin like you do a fasting glucose. You'll get a number there. You want it as low as possible. There really isn't too low unless you're diabetic, right? Assuming you're not type 1 diabetic or insulin dependent type 2, then I want mine around 2 or 3 if I can do it, definitely under 5. And some of the lab values go up to 25 or 30, which is tremendous. And the reason you want that low is because when you eat, you can have number will go up to 7 times what it is at the baseline from the food. So if you're at 5, you go up to 35. Cool, right? But if you're at 20, still medically normal, now you're up at 140.
Crazy.
It's a dramatic difference.
Yeah.
And you do that throughout the day, you got a problem. And then you end the day high, you roll into the next day high, and that's what starts to build the process. And most Americans, unfortunately, 50% of them eat in a 14-hour window. 14 hours. 15 hours, 15-hour window. 50%, it means basically eating from the time they wake up until the time they go to bed. 90% of them are eating in a 12-hour window. 12 hours from start to finish. That means 10% out there are eating in a less than 12-hour window. Never mind 8 or 6 like some of the people we work with, right? Yeah. So we eat, keeping us in a fed state, keeping insulin dominant, and there's a lot of problems with that. It's just not meant to be.
Yeah, and I remember that survey you did on your patient population when you determined that they were snacking, essentially eating 17 to about 23 times per day within the 14 to 15 hours, which is crazy. Because even, Don, if it's the healthiest snacks in the world, it's still causing that insulin spike, and it's still leading to potentially insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. So for those who are listening and they're snackers, what would you say to that?
Yeah, snacking causes a lot of issues. That was a big study. That wasn't mine. I repeated it in my population, but when they actually track, not memory, like write down how many times you think you snack, and they actually tracked. It was an expensive big study because you had to monitor people. They ate caloric or flavored food or drink or something 19 to 23 times a day. So what happens then? People who spread out the multiple meals, they have more negative metabolic impact. And these are big population studies. It's not cause and effect, but it's very tight correlation. Like I bank on it because, and also for weight loss, multiple meals have shown to beat fewer meals. Sometimes they say they're about the same. Okay, I'll take that. If it doesn't show a significant improvement, I don't want to go there because I know about insulin. I know about mTOR, keeping us in the fed state, which we don't want to be in all day long, all night, because then you don't repair. And so we talked about recycling. When your body's not in the fed state, when it's got some time away from food, you start to go into autophagy or the recycling state. And that's very important because one of the things that happens is it starts to, your body cells work better, and cells that have overstayed their welcome will turn off or they'll die. That's where autophagy comes from. Our autophagy does not kill cells. We don't kill our own cells. It basically, you got cells that they have a timeline. And when they get beaten up a little bit and they're not treated well at their job, they go over their retirement age, right? They're working longer than they should. And so here comes autophagy, goes in and fixes that, resets that clock, and they go, oh, I'm not supposed to be here. They die. This is the way they live. So they don't get killed, they die. And what that does is it allows new cells from the stem cells to come in and replace them. And the first things that get broken down in that process is lipid deposits. Lipid deposits. That's like fatty liver, fatty pancreas, and fat in the muscle. Fat's not supposed to be there. At least not triglycerides, because they're made of fat, but a different kind. So triglycerides, and they guck out the works. So the first things that come out is you break down those fat droplets. And where does the fat droplets come from? Being stuck in the fed state. Because remember, they're opposing. Well, one side does, the other side doesn't. They do their opposite. And they can't both be on. People get this mixed up. They can't both be on. You can't be doing in one area of the body a fed action and the other area of the body a repair action. It's like being in one room and the lights, one light in the ceiling and being dark over there and light over here. You can't. It's all or nothing. It's just the way it works. And so the fed state stores fat. When it got too much coming in, doesn't know what to do, it starts to store it in places it really shouldn't. The liver, pancreas, other organs, visceral. That's where visceral fat comes from. That's where triglycerides in the muscle comes from. And that's where plaquing comes from, as in Parkinson's, as in Alzheimer's, right? So you have to be in the fed state because that'll reverse. That's what gets broken down. What also gets broken down is scar tissue. When someone goes on a fast, for example, that's some of the first tissue that gets broken down, scar tissue. Because if you ever twisted an ankle or you had a biology or health class, you know that the body will repair that with inflammation, the whole thing, but it over repairs, right? You get more, it lays down erratic overabundance of scar tissue. And I used to always wonder, why does that happen? Now I think I know, because when you go into times of not eating in the repair state, it just breaks it down. It trims that out.
He broke that down like no other person I've seen before. You now have the protocol, the blueprint to burn serious fat in 2025. I hope you do it. If you do, let me know how it works for you. Share this episode with a friend, and I appreciate you for getting to the end of this lesson here. And if you enjoyed this lesson and you want to learn more about the visceral fat around your organs and nutrition and diet and the best foods to burn visceral fat, I just released a video on the world's easiest diet for visceral fat reduction in 14 days. Pair this diet with what you learned today, and you're going to melt fat fast. So you're about to get the same results that I did. I know this works because this guy right here, me, when I was 24 years old, I was struggling with a ton of fat, obesity. I had prediabetes and high blood pressure, and I tried so many different approaches, and it wasn't until I followed this approach that I'm gonna share with you these 7 steps to burn visceral fat. That's what I achieved.